name is Maria Dismondy, and I am the founder and CEO of Cardinal Rule Press. And joined with me today is Harry, a dog right here. And I am tuning in from my home office in Michigan. That's where Cardinal Rule Press is located. That's where we're housed. But we love putting on specific panels around children's literature, especially when we have new books come out, which is usually when we kind of put a focus. So we just had a book released. You're going to hear all about it. But today we have a couple of housekeeping things. If you have questions, I ask that you put them in the chat. At the very end, we will definitely get to as many questions as we can. You also have the capability of having closed caption on this call, so you can go ahead and click on that down below, CC, and you can select your language as well. And I am going to mute everyone because that just allows us to make sure that everything is all good. So I'm going to mute everyone, and then my speakers, you do have to go ahead and ask to be unmuted. Okay. All right, so we are going to go ahead and begin, and we are going to start today's, let's see, ask to unmute. Hold on, let me get these ladies unmuted. Good, okay. We are going to begin today with an introduction. So I've already introduced myself. I run a publishing company, and I would like our speakers to go ahead and tell us about yourselves, tell us about your background, and especially where are you zooming in from? Who would like to begin?
I can go first. Hi, I'm Brenna Jeanneret. I am coming in to you from Longmont, Colorado. And my background in writing is I've written all of my life. I've always written in some capacity. For a long time, I was writing in sort of the outdoor sphere, which is why we moved to Colorado. My husband and I love to climb, and we love the mountains. So for a long time, that's what I was doing. And then when I had my kid and the pandemic hit, like a lot of us, I was like, oh, it would be really fun to write a book. And that's easy, which is not easy at all. So I started writing, fell in love with writing kidlit. Got an agent who sold my first book to Maria at Cardinal Rule Press, and it just came out May 1st, which is very exciting. It's called The Law of Birthdays, illustrated by Maria Condra, who's amazing, and it's a book about choice, and so that's what we get to talk about today, and I'm so excited to be on this panel and chatting with all of you.
Awesome. And Christina Furnival.
Yes. Hi, you guys. I'm Christina Furnival, and I am coming to you this morning. It's 10 a.m. here in San Diego, California. I'm in my kitchen, and I'm home with my husband and our newest kiddo. We have 3 kids. I have an 8-year-old daughter, a 6-year-old son, and a 9-month-old daughter. And he's on baby duty at the moment, but you might hear some cries or sounds while we're talking today. I am a licensed mental health therapist, and I've been in the field for, I think, about 15 years now. And I always worked with kids. That was something I just loved children. I always wanted to work with kids. And so that's what I did. I got my license in providing therapy, and I worked with children up until I had my own kids. And so for about 8 years now, I've been working mainly with moms. But I got into children's book writing kind of on accident. My 8-year-old was having a problem with a friend, and I went through all my children's books that I have on social emotional learning and mental health, and I couldn't find a book on friendships and speaking up for yourself and setting boundaries. And so I wrote her a little rhyming story in my phone, and it was really helpful for her. And then I forgot about it for a couple of years, and I came back across it on my phone and reread it, and I thought, you know what? I feel like this would be really helpful to other kids as well. So I had it professionally edited, and I began the search of how do you become an author? What do you do? And found publishers that I could submit to. I don't have an agent, and they didn't request my manuscript, so I had to find publishers that were willing to accept unsolicited, unagented manuscripts. And luckily, I heard back from the one I was really hoping for. And we signed a book deal, and then that has kind of dominoed now into a book series called Capable Kiddos. And so we've got 3 books. The very first one I wrote for my daughter, The Not So Friendly Friend, which is how to set boundaries for healthy friendships. Fear Not, which is how to face your fear and anxiety head on. And this news book, which came out a month after my third book came out, a month after my third daughter, my third kiddo, and it's My Brilliant, Resilient Mind, How to Ditch Negative Thinking to Handle Hard Things Better. So now I still provide mental health to moms, but I'm making these books for kiddos. And it's a really nice mix to be able to be a stay-at-home mom and write books and do mental health therapy as well.
Absolutely.
So that's me.
I love, thank you so much for both of your introductions. And Brenna, do you have your book to hold up? Okay. I know mine was downstairs. So one of the things I really like that you both had mentioned is, there she goes.
Here it is.
There it is.
I'm sorry, I muted myself again. I this is the law of birthdays. Yeah, and look at the artwork by Maria Contra. It's like so fun and vibrant and colorful. But yeah, here it is. Yep.
Awesome. And one of the things I like that you both had mentioned is a lot of times writing comes from trying to fill a gap, seeing a gap in the market. And, you know, Christina, you said, I was trying to find a book that talked about boundaries for my child and I couldn't find it. So I wrote it. And it's interesting that you say that, because as an adult, I just recently read an amazing book by Melissa Urban last year. I think it's called The Book of Boundaries. And I thought to myself, there needs to be a book like this for children. And there it is. It's wonderful. So let's go ahead and jump into some of these tricky conversations for children, and especially for the classrooms listening. Like, we'll start with Christina and then we'll go to Brenna, but tell me, like, how would you describe a boundary for a child and how does that come into play in friendships? Oh, sorry. It's these.
Okay, so I won't click to mute. I thought I could in and out, but it won't let me do that. So
same. I did the same thing. Yeah.
Lesson learned. So boundaries, the way that I like to explain it to kids and the way that I like to think about it is with a physical boundary at first. And I think boundaries kind of can get a bad rap where we think maybe we're being mean because we're drawing a line with somebody. And so when I think of the mean boundary, I like to picture like a barbed wire fence. It's a barrier in between you and somebody else. And it's kind of aggressive and not so nice. But that's not what I think boundaries are. Boundaries, I like to see more as a white picket fence. So it's still a divider. It's still saying, this is mine. These are my emotions. These are my feelings. This is my stuff. And this is yours on the other side of my white picket fence. But our white picket fences also come with a gate. And with that gate is flexibility. We can shut it to close out the harmful or the bad or the things we don't like, but we can open it to let in the good. Because boundaries sometimes can be too rigid or they can be too fluid. And it's when they're either of those that we start to feel uncomfortable. It's when we've got our nice, beautiful little fence with our little gate that we can be assertive yet kind and very clearly state what's ours and what we like and what we don't. And so a boundary when we're speaking to somebody, or a boundary in a relationship, it's what we say. We say, I do or don't like what you're doing to me or to somebody else. And by setting a boundary, we're being really clear and we're showing our self-love and we're showing our relationship love. So that's kind of the way that I like to think about it.
Yeah. And I actually just thought about one of my own daughter's recent situations where there were some friends and they were talking negatively about someone else that you know is considered a friend, and my daughter said, I don't think we should be talking about her. So in the picket fence, she's basically saying, like, that kind of language about somebody who we say we care about should be outside of our fence. Like, we're gonna let in like the kind words, but I don't want to participate when it has to do with putting someone else down that I care about. Would you say that that's kind of an example of that fence?
Absolutely. And I'm proud of your daughter. That's not an easy thing to do.
Well,
speaking up can be uncomfortable.
Yes, we talk a lot around here because, I mean, I'm in this line of work too, and it's so hard as an adult, and we want to give them these tools for those children who are listening so that you feel empowered, that you can use your own voice to kind of set those boundaries when you are in that situation. So
absolutely. Yeah. It's not only okay, but you should. And it's one of those things, it's a muscle. It feels uncomfortable and sore maybe at first, but the more you use it and the more you develop it, the stronger you get at it and the more comfortable you are with it.
Wonderful. And that goes to
yeah, I was just gonna say, I love how you described that, because like with my 7-year-old, and then even with myself and my husband, like when you become parents, you have to like unlearn and like relearn things that you didn't always grow up with. And I like, the older I get, the more I realize like I thought I had good boundaries and maybe I don't have good boundaries. And so like you, Maria, we talk about it in our house like kind of constantly, to the point where like my kid is just like, please, do we have to talk about like can we not have another long conversation? So no, I love that. And I also I very much like felt when you said like, yeah, setting a boundary a lot of times feels like you're being mean, because you're like, a lot of times boundaries means like no, you can't do this, but it's not always it's not always a no or like a hard stop, right? It's sort of a negotiation sometimes. So I love what you were saying about the door and like it being open and it can swing, one way or the other, and you can sort of like back and forth, like what does this boundary look like for everybody? Like it's not just like I'm trying to keep you out, I'm also trying to show you like what you can do on your side. Like if you don't want this emotion like coming into your gate, that's fine, but this is how you have to help me like keep it on my side, or vice versa. So yeah, we talk about it, like I said, ad nauseum in my house. And I feel like my husband and I both are sort of unlearning how not to set boundaries, and like relearning and teaching ourselves along with my kid how to be upfront about that and clear, and also kind, because you can be kind about it. You don't, it doesn't have to be a mean thing. So
well, and what leads me into your story, which is about choice. Harry, come here. Which is about choice and how sometimes speaking your voice may sound unkind. So let's talk about your story. Tell everyone in short what your story is about and how it really has to do with choice.
yeah. So, okay. So it's called The Law of Birthdays, a story about choice. And essentially it's the king's birthday, and he is passing out cake and they're singing happy birthday. And he just assumes like everybody loves cake. They're just all going to want cake. But he gets to this one girl and she's like, no, thank you. Like, I don't want any cake. And he is like totally baffled. He doesn't understand. He's like, it's the law of birthdays. Like, you have to have cake. And she's like, no, I don't want any cake. And when I wrote it, I really had fun with her, because I wrote it as a flat arc. So my main character doesn't learn anything. But what she does do is she stands her ground, and she's able to say over and over and over again in different ways, no, thank you, I don't want any cake. And so the king is the one who has to come around and be like, wait, like, what are you actually saying to me? Like, you just want a choice? Like, that's all you really want? And she's like, yeah, like, I just don't want it forced on me, right? Which a lot of times is what it comes down to. Like, it's not even necessarily that they don't want the thing. This is what I find with my kid. It's not that he doesn't want to do the thing. He just wants an option. Maybe he does want to do it, but me coming at him really forcefully and being like, you have to, it is always going to end in like a power struggle or a fight. So if I give him options, I'm much more likely to end up with the outcome, that I think that he's going to give me, or that I want, or whatever. Which is why I ended the book the way that I did, because I feel like even if you make a choice in the moment, it doesn't define you for your whole life. That's not the only choice you ever get to make. Like, if you like cake for your 3rd birthday and you love cake, on your 4th birthday, you don't have to have cake. It's like it's a whole new choice. You can choose not to have cake. You can choose not to like cake. So I love the ending, and where the main character is like, well, actually, maybe I do want some cake. Like, that sounds really great. Actually, I wanted to come to it on my own terms, which a lot of times is what boundaries are about. So.
And we're raising children. We're trying to empower those kiddos out there listening, that you are going to be our next generation of leaders, and we want you to be making decisions, and we want you to be thinking like between choice A, choice B. And when you make those choices, what are the consequences of my choices? So if I choose choice A, what is that going to lead to? And if I choose choice B, what will that lead to? Because that's what really makes powerful decision makers and leaders who can stand behind their choices. So ladies, you are such good panelists that you totally shared with us your inspiration for writing as we went through this. So I'm not going to go there, but I do want to talk a little bit about your process of writing. So you have the story idea. I know, Christina, you had mentioned you kind of wrote a rhyme and you put it into your phone so you could read it at night. Tell us a little bit more about your process.
So each book has been a little different because The Not So Friendly Friend was written with no intention of it becoming a book. Like I said, I just used, put it into my phone. When it became time to submit it to publishers and say, like, you know what, actually, I think this could be a book, I then put it onto my computer. So I typed it up and then I hired someone to edit it for me. They gave me back their edits and then I edited it further. So there was a lot of mistakes or things that I decided didn't fit just right. And so I wanted to make it as great as I could make it. So I worked really hard in editing. That's a really long process. And then submitted it to the publishers. With Fear Not, the publisher had reached back out to me to see if I was going to continue writing more stories. And the topic of Fear Not was, again, inspired by my children. I find, particularly with my middle kiddo, lots of spiraling thoughts. And I wanted to create a story that was surrounding how to push through fear and anxiety, how to live alongside it, and how not to push it away. Because a lot of times when we have big feelings, especially uncomfortable ones, we try and kind of like move them to the side. But the problem with that is they pop up, and usually at inconvenient times. So with Fear Not, I sat down and I thought about what are the tools that I can provide, actionable steps. And so that story has 3 steps that you can take to push through your fears, to do what you want to do, even with the fears, and how to cope with that alongside. And so that story took a lot longer to write. It didn't flow out of me in the same way. And I really wanted to make sure it was using evidence-based practices since I'm a mental health therapist. I wanted it to be cognitive behavioral therapy based. And then same kind of with the third book as well. And that book's about how we have these automatic thoughts when hard things happen. And sometimes our thoughts actually make things harder for us. And there are ways to shift our thinking, not to tell ourselves a lie and not to be so positive when something's really bad, but to look at something from another angle or another perspective and see it in a way that we actually then can help ourselves to overcome those challenges and to be more resilient. And that story similarly took a lot of time and effort on the writing on the front end. And then as with the first story, all 3 took a lot of time in editing. And that's really where I think you can shine, polish it and make it as clear as you want it. And sometimes your favorite part of the story doesn't actually fit with the story and you have to take that out. But in the end, hopefully you end up with what you're excited to have as a full story.
So boys and girls, pay attention that the part that took a really long time was editing and revising. So when your teachers say go back and polish up your work for a finished product, they mean business.
Mm-hmm.
And Christina, I can't remember who had said this, but I think it might have been Elizabeth Gilbert, but someone had mentioned fear being in the back seat. And, it's not that you're kicking fear out of the car, but you can say, I'm the driver, you can sit in the back seat. So you're still there, but I'm going to put you in your place until, it's time. So I like that because there is a lot of fear in situations, but we can just stick you in the back seat.
Exactly.
Yeah. And how about you, Brenna? What would you say, your process?
So I talk about this a lot on the Kidlit podcast that I do, about being a pantser. So for kids and adults listening, if you don't know, so the 2 kinds of writers are generally, and there's, variations, are pantsers and plotters. So plotters, sit down, they have their idea, they plot it out, they sort of write the bullet points and they, write in between, they know where they're going. Pantsers don't do that. They just start writing and figure out what happens afterwards. So, yep, I am also a pantser in life and in writing. So, I will often get an idea and maybe it's like a word play on a title or like a funny character or whatever. And I don't know, my brain just doesn't work in a way where I can plot out what is going to happen. It's like I have to go to the page and like walk the character through some stuff to figure out what they're going to do or what the story is actually about. Mm-hmm. So sometimes that works in my favor. Like for Law of Birthdays, that actually came out pretty quickly because I was more clear on what my focus was and what I actually wanted to say. it's not always that clear. Like that one just kind of poured out of me. That one was relatively easy. Well, easy as far as books go. But I have so many that I just, I sit down and I write and I just, you get it out and you're like, okay, great. I'm going to let it sit and come back. Cause every idea I get out, I'm like, yes, this is the one, this is amazing. Right. And I like want to show everybody. And then I come back the next day and I'm like, oh, well, maybe it's not as good as I thought. Like maybe I need to like, rework some stuff. I have one manuscript that I've written 45 different ways because I couldn't get the perspective quite right. So, different main characters, different ways of telling it, more of the nonfiction piece, more of the fun piece. So anyways, that is my process. And then I do a lot of revisions. But I will say the great Stephen King also writes that way and has said in his book on writing, which I love and is so good. He sort of equates writing to like digging for fossils. Like you start to write and then it's sort of like the story sort of like shows itself, which is a great way of putting it. Cause I feel like that is exactly how I write. It has to sort of like come to me. So
I love that. I think it's great. And I'd never heard it put that way. So thank you for sharing the plotter and the
pantser. Yep, the pantser. Because you just fly by the seat of your pants. Yeah.
Pantser. I kept thinking prancer, like friends. Pantser.
Yeah.
Okay. So, a lot of what we're talking about, whether it's having boundaries or putting fear in the backseat or having a choice and speaking your mind, it's about speaking out. And so now I want to talk about, what are your messages that your author's message that you really want to take away? You want children and adults reading these stories to really take away, like, about speaking out and the importance of that in our world today. It's a heavy question. Let's see if we can get this one.
Oh, I can go.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this question before we got on, and my thought, like specific to my book and just my life and how we sort of try to communicate with my kid about this kind of stuff, is so setting the boundaries and then talking about them and why the boundary is being set, and like very specifically like how my kid is making me feel or how I'm making him feel is about perspective, like we kind of touched on. But listening to what the other person says and like really sort of feeling, trying to get in their shoes and listen to what they're saying and how that might make you feel or how they feel is really about growing that empathy, like understanding the other side, right? Which I feel like so much of our world is divided, on so many topics. But a lot of it, I think, is because, we don't understand the other side. It's just a lot of like yelling and fighting and just like, a lot of like hard lines are being drawn. And it's like, well, you don't always know the whole story. So if you can sit down and sort of have that conversation, over your fence of, boundaries, like this is okay, this is not okay. Like with my kid a lot, I'm like, look, you can be upset, you can be mad, you can be frustrated, you can be sad. Like these are all great emotions. You can have them all, but you cannot be rude to me. You cannot, you cannot yell at me. You cannot, make me feel or, say X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
So the emotion is fine. I always try to validate the emotion, but it's the way that you say it and the way that it comes across that is the thing that I feel like everybody needs to work on. I mean, myself included, I get upset and
practicing empathy, putting yourself in the other person's shoes, using a filter. And, my calendar, I have this beautiful mental health calendar. It's in our kitchen. And today it said something like, focus on responding versus reacting. And that's really what it comes to. We're using, like, instead of saying, yes, I have a choice to speak up. I'm allowed to say whatever I want because I can use my voice, I can speak up, but you also need to manage those emotions so that you're not to your mother because you want pizza. No, that is not the appropriate way to talk to somebody you love and care about. So it's the responding and thinking about what you're going to say versus just letting it all come out.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Totally.
Yeah. And it you guys have touched on it. It comes back to social emotional skills, emotional regulation, self-control, and perspective taking, social awareness, collaboration. All of it is so intertwined. And in order for us to be able to realize that we have the choice to speak up we first need to recognize, how am I feeling in this situation? What are my thoughts about what's happening? What are my thoughts and feelings telling me? And this goes into what you just said, Maria, with responding versus reacting. I might feel defensive by something and have the instinct to yell or scream or to whatever. But if I can take a second and feel that defensiveness, feel it in my body, recognize what's happening, then I can pause and think about it. And okay, why would I feel defensive in this moment? Is my defensiveness protecting something more vulnerable? Like maybe I feel self-aware about something, or I'm nervous about something. And then how can I use the information that my feelings are telling me, if they are data, if they are information and not directors of me, in the same way that you're talking about driving the car with your anxiety, I'm in control. What am I going to do with this? What do I need? What can I ask for? And then you also need to feel like you're valuable. And I want everyone who's watching today to know you matter. Your thoughts and feelings, your wants and needs matter. And you have an absolute right to speak up, to protect yourself in those things. And so all of that comes into play, your self-worth, self-love, relationship care, and empathy. It all comes together. And so I love that we're talking about this today.
I know, and it's Mental Health Awareness Month.
And perfect. I just wanted to add one thing onto that too, because talking with my 7-year-old, and there are kids listening. Sometimes you don't always have the word to apply to, like how you're feeling. Like I still sometimes feel like that, but especially as a 7-year-old, right? You're not always articulate enough to say like, oh, I'm frustrated because I'm missing, my friends or whatever, right? Those really nuanced, like complex emotions. So, just having a place to start and sort of trying to unravel, why you're angry or why you're frustrated, because these emotions can be so nuanced, I feel like is really important too. Like it's okay to be mad and frustrated, but then, like dig a little deeper to figure out maybe why, or what was the situation, or what exactly happened. Because we run into that a lot. Like, why are you upset? I don't know. I'm just mad. Or are you so mad that he's just non-responsive? So I just wanted to throw that out there.
No, it's important in adults too. And our 15-year-old has taught me so much about the value of apologizing. And the other day I reacted instead of responding in the car. And it took me about 15 minutes to realize I was very hungry, and you might call this hangry. And I apologized to my daughter. Like, what I said, the way I said it was not kind. I apologize. Will you accept my apology? And it was because I was hungry, but that's not an excuse. But I need to check in with myself and figure out what's going on with me. Why did you react that way? It's because I was really hungry, but it's not a reason. It's not an excuse to say, I'm so sorry, I was not nice to you. I was hungry. Well, that's not, you apologize. You don't say, make excuses. You apologize. So
I was about to say exactly that. If your basic needs, parents, caregivers, teachers, kids, if your basic needs of sleep and eating aren't being met, it's likely we're going to be more easily irritated, or we're more prone to react. And so even if Brenna, I love that you were saying unravel and digging deep. And if we can't find the source, that's okay too. But if we can recognize that how we're feeling is impacting how we are engaging with other people, that we can draw a boundary for ourselves and be like, you know what, I know that I'm kind of cranky. I don't know why, but I'm going to not engage in this way, or I'm not going to play with this friend who I know I tend to get upset with, or those sorts of things.
Yeah, I'm going to shut my 6 cents and I'm going to go take some time to be alone.
Exactly.
I say that to my husband all the time. We have that conversation all the time, because every morning we check in with each other. We're like, how are you doing? Like, what's going on? And more often, relatively often, one of us will be like, I feel weird and I don't know why. And we're like, okay, well, thank you for telling me. Like, now I know, and weird that can cover all manner of things. Because a lot of times it just, you just wake up and you feel kind of off, or something isn't like quite right, but you don't really know why. But it's good to give people a heads up. And that happened with my kid the other day too. He was having a really hard morning, and then he finally was like, Daddy, like, I'm having a hard day. And we're like, oh, okay. Like, something is not quite right. Okay, got it. Like, well, be more gentle, back off, give you some more time. Like, like just acknowledging, like you're saying, even if you can't find the root of it, just figure out that you don't feel 100% and let people know. That even is helpful.
I love it. So we're going to move into our Q&A period, and we do have some questions from the audience coming in. So one of the questions is, what are you you've written, but what are you currently working on? Is there something you can share with us?
Yeah, I'll go. I feel like I'm always writing something. I have several PBs that are picture books. Sorry for people who don't know that terminology. Picture books, not peanut butter. I'm I'm writing several that are sort of in different stages of revisions, because I just tend to get some writer's block, and then I have to like switch gears to like keep things moving. But I'm also finishing up a middle grade novel, doing revisions on that, which is really cool. And then polishing a YA novel in verse that I'm hoping to be done with pretty soon. So yeah, so that's what I'm writing. Also, P.S. if you hear my corgi in the background, she's downstairs and she's a little bit bummed. So if anybody hears her, that's what's happening.
Oh.
Yep.
And Christina, anything you're working on that you'd like to share? I mean, besides, tending to humans, which is very important.
So I kind of how we were talking about the pantsers, I need to feel a spark in order to write something. And I currently am so occupied that I haven't had the urge, or like a certain topic hasn't kind of stood out to me as a need that I want to touch on. What I am doing is, with the 3 books from the Capable Kiddos series that I showed earlier, is I'm starting to put together a workbook. And my plan is that it could be helpful to parents and teachers and therapists for how activities or exercises, how to use those books in a way that really enriches the story itself and helps your kiddos to practice the skills that are with them. So that's kind of my next project in between, with nap times and feeding and all this. all this stuff.
And think about teachers too, being able to take the story and then extend on it in the classroom.
Exactly.
And that actually leads, Christina, that leads into our next question, because someone had mentioned, how carefully do you look at comparable books to see if what you have written has already been published or something similar?
I, with the Not So Friendly Friend, really had searched long and hard for a book on boundaries. Thankfully, now there are more. So I'm happy to be amongst other books now. When it came to Fear Not, there are already several books on anxiety for kids when I wrote that, but I felt like my angle was different. And I think that's a good thing to remember when you're writing a story, even if there's other ones out there like it, no one has your voice. No one is going to say something exactly how you say it. And if you feel like you're different enough, or your angle or perspective is different enough, absolutely go for it.
Wonderful. How about you, Brenna?
Yeah, I'll say I very heavily research comparison books because first of all, if you're going to query an agent or an editor with your book, generally they want to see, where you see it fitting in the market and what you think you can offer, as like a different perspective or different voice. So those kinds of things are helpful too, just to know sort of like where it might fit in the marketplace and, what you're bringing to the table. And then also, you want to make sure that like you're not writing like a title that has already been written, or like has been written by like, especially like a big name author that's like everywhere, and you're just like, oh yeah, like that title's amazing, like I totally came up with that, and you're like, oh wait, it was actually like in my brain from like wherever. So I definitely Google like titles and stuff too, just to double check. But yeah, comp titles are really helpful to have.
Wonderful. Another question came up, thinking about writing a story about a heavy topic. Is there advice around having fictional characters such as talking dinosaurs, or do you think it's more important to have children so that children can connect to that heavier topic? I personally, as a publisher, I have seen a lot of value in having social emotional learning books that depict real kids, or fictional kids, because the children can more easily say, okay, I have been in a situation like that, or if I'm in a situation like that, they'll think back, I can respond like Susie in the book Spaghetti in a Hot Dog or something, whatever it is. So do you have anything to add to that? I personally think children characters are important, but that could be my opinion.
I think they're super important, definitely. And I also think there's definitely space for, those like animal characters or anthropomorphized characters. depending on, depending on your audience, or maybe like how sensitive your kid is or how close to home the topic is, I feel like giving voice to, a character that isn't them is helpful in a way that sort of gives them like a buffer or a little bit of like, what's the word, like, detachment.
Yes.
Because just like a place to start from, it might be an easier entry for some kids just to be like, oh, okay, I can see what's happening there. I don't have to like feel it in my body. Like, because as an empath, like if I read something heavy and I'm not like in the right mindset to do it, I will absorb all of that. And then it's like in my body, and then I feel all of the stuff. And I just, like if I'm not prepared for it, yeah, it's too much. And then I'm taking on somebody else's story. Like it's not even mine, and then I feel terrible. And I'm just like,
I'm
oh
reading
God.
for enjoyment.
Yeah. So like, I feel like there's value in both is all.
Yeah, and as you were saying that, I was thinking about the series I had to look it up, Ryan Higgins, We Don't Eat Our Classmates, and there's and those dinosaurs have lots of big feelings, but it does take a step back from being a child. So
yeah, I would agree. My son is more sensitive, so kind of like you were saying, Brenna, when it comes to anger books, I've bought ones that are more animal based. It's a little more indirect, or like the main character, his anger is manifested as animals. And I think then it can give shape to that. So it's not just like this feeling. So I think it can have a time and a place. I know with my books, I have people characters, but with the Not So Friendly Friend, it's a girl. And I have received feedback that they wish there was a boy version. And same with Fear Not, they wish there was a girl version. And so for my Brilliant Resilient Mind, we did boy-girl twins. We're gonna hit everyone then. That way, no one doesn't feel like they can relate. So I guess with animals, it opens that up maybe more. But I think, did you mention dinosaurs was what the person was asking? Yeah. There are a lot of dinosaur themed heavier stories. So maybe a different animal or creature.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, we have to say thank you because this has been amazing. 38 minutes of great conversation, great advice, and the inside scoop, because you cannot Google this information. We are hearing from live authors today. We are getting to hear about their inspiration, about their processes, and we get to hear it right from you. We're not Googling any of this. So thank you so much. And let's see. Yes, and we did have one more question about agents and agents outside of the United States. So many wonderful agents and agencies. And a lot of the United States agencies will represent a UK author. So I'm just trying to answer, a couple questions as we kind of wrap up. But thank you so much, ladies, for being here today. Have a great rest of your morning, Christina, Brenna, a great rest of your afternoon. And we just thank you so much. And boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
bye, everybody.
We will send the replay out tomorrow with links to purchase both of your books. So thanks again.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.